Alright, so this is going to be a SRCTAS setup explanation video for Portal 1. So this is going to cover just about everything you need to know up to making your very first script. So the very first thing that I'll mention is that I'm going to be doing this on unpack. As far as I know, the current tasking tools only work on unpack. If you don't know what unpack is, you probably shouldn't be learning how to task, but I'll leave a link in the description anyway. You also want the most updated version of SBT, or the source pause tool, which again I'll leave a link for, but you can find, that's not the right one, you can find by going right over here, and then you want to download just the good old sbt.dll, and then put that in the portal or the HL2 folder of unpack, whatever you prefer. So then I'm going to load up a sample map, for example, giant playground. And then I'm going to go, I'll just go down here and make like a simple save. So the way that the script is going to work is that you tell the task to load a save, and then, well, it loads a save, and then you tell it to do stuff from there. So I'm going to make a very cool save and then call it, for example, oh, I don't know, like cucumber. Yep, that's not spelled right. Cucumber. Whoa. Okay. So then you want to go into your portal folder. You probably want to make a separate task folder where you're going to put all your scripts in. Not necessary, but it's just nice to have all of your scripts in one spot. And then I'm going to make a new text file and then call it juice.sourcetas. And yes, I want to change the extension. Open it up in your favorite text editor of choice. Let me just do move to, and then I can do this. Wow. And then I will paste a, I'll leave like a sample script in the description as well that you can use. And so this is just kind of like a starting point of what your very first script might look like. So this is just like a bare bones script, if you will. So let's go through a couple of these things beforehand. So first, the save, you want to give it the save name. So I called mine cucumber. And then the demo name is whatever demo the task is going to record to. So I'll just leave it at this right now. Play speed is the play speed. I'll talk about all of this stuff in just a little bit. I'm going to save the script, and then in the game, I'm going to do task_script. Oh, right. Gotta load SBT first. And then as long as it doesn't say like loaded version 0.6, that means that you, and it says like a recent date, that probably means you have a recent version. And then I'll do task script load. And then since my folder is tasks, I'm going to do task/ and then I believe I called it juice. No extension here. And then all it does right now is it just loads the save. So that's what this script here does. So now let's actually go through and I'll actually describe what everything here does. So I've already explained these three things. Then you have settings. So these are commands that are executed every time the script does a load. So I'll go through and explain what some of these things are. These are not necessary to have for your script. These are just things that I like to have kind of as a default. So I can just copy all of this whenever I make a new script. And I already have all this stuff set up. So task strafing vectorial basically means the task is still going to strafe just fine, but it's not going to visually move its view from side to side 20 times a second. It just looks a lot better. Task strafe direction 3, you can look up in the game, so you can do task strafe dir, and then if you do the help menu, so it tells you 0 is to the left, 1 is to the right, 3 is to the yaw given in task strafe yaw, which is actually exactly what we want. I'll explain what that means in just a little bit. Speedrun stop, I have that here because I often have speedrun segment on, and so I want speedrun stop so that way the task can actually record properly so that we can actually record demos properly. Not the settings isn't the best place to have that, but it's fine for, I think, just about all cases. Task strafe AFH just means that it's going to AFH instead of ABH. So normally the task would, every time it does an ABH, it turns around for a single tick. Not a huge deal, but again, looks a little bit visually better. And test strafe version, this is here for backwards compatibility. So usually before you load any scripts, you would want to test strafe version, and then whatever value this is set to, this will be whatever this value is set to by default, this should be the value that SBT has for the current most up-to-date version. So basically, if the strafing is changed anyway in the future, then say the test strafe version is updated, when you run old scripts, if they have this test strafe version thing in there, then it'll just revert to the old behavior and your script will still work fine and it won't break. Test scripts are very, very sensitive to all sorts of very very unexpected stuff. Basically, any tiny change will make a huge difference. So vars, this is where you're going to put all your variables. I'm not going to explain that in this video. Frames. So this section here is the actual meat of the test. This is where you put all of the frame bulks. So this is a frame bulk, this is a frame bulk, and this is a frame bulk. So what a frame bulk actually is it basically tells the test what to do for how many ticks. So here I have this comment that basically tells you what every single, dash represents. So for example, if I replace this dash right here with an S, if I wanted to replace this dash, I would replace it with an S. If I wanted to replace this dash, I would replace it with an F. If I wanted to replace this one, I would replace it with a D, so on and so forth. And all of these letters have different meanings. So let me actually see if I can pull up really quickly exactly what different what the letters all represent. So if you go to the SRCTAS documentation, and then hopefully this will be updated at some point, but you can scroll down to frame bulks, and then right over here it tells you, so field 1, so S stands for strafe, this X represents the strafe type, so 0 means something, 1 means something. The second X means the jump type, ABH, old engine bhop, glitchless bhop, L, lagax, and then you've got all these different letters that all mean different things. F stands for forward, L left, R, B, U, D, so on and so forth. Jump, duck, use, attack, etc. So the way that what the script does exactly right now is that let's see, basically you have these frame bulks, and then the very last section tells you here how many ticks the frame bulk runs for. So this particular one runs for exactly 1 tick. So all it does is it just it does nothing, but it also runs a command CL mouse enable, so that 0, and that just disables my mouse. So the way that I have a lot of my scripts set up is that on the very first tick it'll disable your mouse, and on the very last tick it'll re-enable it, so that way I don't accidentally touch my mouse during while the script is running, and it doesn't cause any issues. Again, not really necessary. This is just stuff that I like to have personally. And then right here we have a frame bulk which does nothing for 100 ticks. And so again, if we run the script, all it does really is it just loads the save and doesn't actually do anything. So let me demonstrate if I a very simple thing that your script can do. So for example, I'll demonstrate strafing. So first you need to pick a direction for the test to strafe in. So I want to strafe in this direction. So that in this case, that's a yaw of -90. So let's tell it to do that. So I'm just going to duplicate this frame bulk here, and then let's say for 300 ticks, I'm going to tell it to go, so you can see this third to last section is the yaw. I'm going to tell it to go towards -90. And then to actually tell it to strafe, so there's a bunch of different things that you can do. Again, like these two, for example, these two X's here can have different values, and that basically means different strafe types. Again, that's all in the documentation. So if I wanted to just ABH, what I can do is I can do SO1, and then this is going to be a J here, and then also I'm going to duck. So what this basically means is that it's going to strafe, and then let's pull up what 0 means. I did not open up the right thing. let's see, right over here. So let's see, 0 right here is the strafe type. That means maximum acceleration. And then a 1 over here means ABH, which is exactly what we want. So that's perfect. And then this J means auto jump. So again, that's all in the documentation. It's auto jump right there. It's different from this J because this J is like a regular jump input. So you basically need to unpress jump before you repress it. And the same thing goes with like use and a couple of the other ones, I'm sure. But yeah. So strafe with auto jump while ducking. Towards a yaw of -90 for 300 ticks. So let's run it again. So it waits for 100 ticks and then it begins strafing. And there you go. So very cool. And then the script is done, so we can just mess around here. So that's not the optimal way of moving around, but it's a good place to get started. So a better way to move around. This isn't the best case in all scenarios, but I'll just demonstrate. So you would want to actually pre-strafe on the ground. So the way that you would do that is you would basically do all of the same stuff, but you would turn off auto jump and you would begin ducking. So basically what this means is you start strafing, you start ground strafing, and you start ducking, and then once you're fully ducked, which happens after 27 ticks, then you actually begin auto jump and jumping, doing ABHs. So this is kind of like doing a circle strafe, except it's a test, so it'll do it perfectly. So depending on like different cases, you would want to pre-strafe for a different number of ticks. So this is not the best case in all scenarios, but this is kind of an example of like better than just strafing. And so you can see it starts to pre-strafe before it, what's the word for it? It starts to pre-strafe on the ground before it goes into an ABH. And that would normally be faster, but in this case, you can see the way that the hop spacing actually worked out is that I actually didn't make it up there. So again, it really depends on the different scenarios. Like you would want to adjust the ticks that you pre-strafe for, and normally that would be faster, but in this case it isn't, which is kind of a shame. So I'll point out a couple of other nuances, or a couple of other nice things to have. So I guess I'll demonstrate TAS 1. So I'll just put that right over here. And then what you can do with this, so if I run the script again, yeah, I'll run the script again. This is a very useful feature to have in just about every single script that you make. After it stops all the frame blocks, it now pauses, but you can look around. And this is very, very useful in a bunch of different cases. And so you can like figure out angles and stuff that like say, oh, you wanted to strafe over there. Well, now you can look towards that angle and figure out, figure out exactly what that angle should be. And like, oh, maybe there's a wall right in front of you, so you can figure out you can pause and figure out how many ticks you should keep strafing for in order to try and avoid it. So this is very useful. The disadvantage with this, there's a few nuances with test pause, but one of the main things is that before you do anything, before you load any scripts, before you load any saves, before you go to the map, etc., you want to disable it. Otherwise, it'll crash your game. And now you can continue to load scripts and stuff like that. Like if you, for example, set up a bind, that's going to load your script. You also probably want to put task pause 0 at the beginning of it, just so that your game doesn't crash by accident. There's a couple of other useful things to have, so I'm going to turn the play speed down, and then I'll run the script again. So having the script play in slow motion is obviously very useful sometimes. But there's kind of another problem with this, which I'll show. And it's that after your script is done, and say you want to mess around, so you turn off task pause, and now you just want to mess around and try and figure some stuff out, but your gameplay is still in like quote-unquote slow motion, and so you probably want to have a bind that resets this so that way it'll bring it back to a playable state and you can keep on messing around. And so what I have for this, I have a massive bind that basically just disables a bunch of stuff, runs a bunch of commands, and it brings the game back to a fully playable state. So I'll go through what these things do. So task script results stop basically tells the task to stop searching. Task pause 0, I explained why that's useful. I think this wait is here as it needs to be. And then it sets the host frame rate and FPS max values to their back to their defaults. It executes untests, which is a config I'll show in a little bit. Enables the mouse, and then portal funneling and speedrun segment. These are just personal preferences. So let me show what the config is, or what it does. So untest.config here. All it does is it basically runs a bunch of minus commands. So if you are if you do your script, and let's say this is a bad example script, but I'm just kind of showing this for an example. If you had something like this, where you had plus forward at the very last bit, I guess, if you had something like this, where on the very last frame bulk, you're still holding in plus inputs, so like plus forward, plus left, plus attack, whatever, stuff like that, and you don't have an empty frame bulk after it, those commands will get stuck on, similar to how during demo playback, those commands can get stuck on if you stop playing the demo. So I just have this, which is just basically like minuses a bunch of different commands, so that way none of those commands get stuck on. And I'll also leave that bind in the description. So it's just very useful to have, so I can basically run the script. I don't want to have this actually in it. But if I can run the script, and then it'll do all of the fancy stuff that it's doing, and then at the very end I can just execute the bind, and then afterwards I can just mess around and do all sorts of my own stuff. Just mess around in the level and try and figure stuff out. It didn't actually task pause because this is commented. Yeah, and so there's a bunch of different nuances to how a lot of this stuff works, but this should be a general setup for just making your very first script and trying figuring stuff out just to get started. And then you should be able to use the doc in order to like help yourself during do just about anything that you want to be able to. Some of the advanced stuff isn't documented, but it's very difficult to actually incorporate that into the doc at the moment. And so if I press the bind right now, then it'll just reset the game back to a playable state, and then I can just continue to jump around. So hopefully some people will find this useful.